All right, welcome back again to another Doug Show podcast. This is a short one, and this one is because last night, Golden State Warriors beat the 1996 Chicago Bulls record for most wins in a regular season, winning their 73rd game. And we're doing this podcast to break down who is better, the 96 Bulls or the 2016 Golden State Warriors. We know how great Steph Curry is. We know how great this team is coming off of a NBA championship. They were the team to beat, and they proved it all year. Nobody, I don't care what anyone says, at the beginning of the season saw this team winning 73 games. I know there was some talk of 70. Maybe it would be close. But winning the 73rd game last night cemented them as one of the top two NBA teams of all time. The other, of course, the beloved or hated, depending on who your team is, 96 Bulls. Now, we will do a little bit of a refresher for you going back to the 1996 season because that was, 10 years ago. So we're going to jump right back into it. It was the 50th season of the National Basketball Association. And right before the season, the year before, the NBA lockout had happened. The NBA that season established its first Canadian teams, the Toronto Raptors and the Vancouver Grizzlies, as the 28th and 29th franchises. The Chicago Bulls would end this season going 87-13, the best in NBA history. Prior to the NBA playoffs, the Bulls shocked the basketball world by wearing black socks, claiming this as redemption to the city's most infamous sports moment, the Black Sox scandal of 1919. The Sox would become a Bulls playoff tradition, which other teams soon follow. However, this was not the first time a team or particular player wore black socks. Earlier this season, Orlando Magic forward Dennis Scott wore black socks while competing in the AT&T three-point shootout at the NBA All-Star Weekend. The Miami Heat had just hired Pat Riley as the team's new head coach and president of basketball operations. Riley's first moves were the acquisition of Alonzo Mourning from the Charlotte Hornets for Glenn Rice and the trade for Tim Hardaway from the Golden State Warriors for Kevin Willis. Hardaway and Mourning would turn around the Miami Heat for several years to come. NBA debuts that season: Kevin Garnett, Michael Finley, Rasheed Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse, and Damon Stoudemire, who would be the Rookie of the Year that year. Michael Jordan became the only player to win the NBA Finals MVP award at least 4 times. He would also become the second player to earn the MVP treble since Willis Reed in 1970, having won All-Star Game, regular season, and Finals MVP, an achievement he also accomplished in 98 and later on by Shaquille O'Neal in 2000. Jordan won his 8th scoring title that season. The Celtics played their first game at the Fleet Center, now TD Gardens, which is a dump if you've ever been there. Don't go there. There's homeless people all downstairs, and there's McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts everywhere. The NBA All-Star Game was held in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas, with the East, not the Heat, the East winning 129-118. Los Angeles Clippers guard Brent Barry won the slam dunk contest that season. The referees were locked out to begin the season, but reached an agreement to return to work in December of 95. Magic Johnson came out of retirement to play in 32 games for the Los Angeles Lakers before retiring again at the end of the season. Hakeem Olajuwon would pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the all-time leader in block shots in the last game of the season. John Stockton also became the all-time steals and assists leader, passing Maurice Cheeks and Magic Johnson respectively. And Robert Parrish also passed Abdul-Jabbar for most games played in the NBA. The Portland Trail Blazers' longest sellout streak by any team in professional sports ends at 814 games, during which the team played its first season at higher capacity Rose Garden in Portland. So going through And first of all, before we get into things, let's just look at the 1996 NBA All-Star team rosters. The Eastern Conference: Penny Hardaway, Michael Jordan, Grant Hill, Scottie Pippen, Shaquille O'Neal. Think of that lineup. Penny Hardaway, Michael Jordan, Grant Hill, Scottie Pippen, Shaquille O'Neal. Pretty tough lineup. The reserves were Vin Baker, Terrell Brandon, Patrick Ewing, Juwan Howard, Reggie Miller, Alonzo Mourning, and Glenn Rice. The Western Conference had Clyde Drexler, Jason Kidd, Charles Barkley, Shawn Kemp, Akeem Olajuwon. Their reserves were Sean Elliott, Karl Malone, Dikembe Mutombo, Gary Payton, Mitch Richmond, David Robinson, and John Stockton. Those are loaded, just ridiculously loaded NBA All-Star teams. All right, getting right into the season. By division, the Orlando Magic won the Atlantic Division over the New York Knicks. They went 60-22 that year. The Knicks, who we will look at a little more in depthly, after Pat Riley left to go to the Heat, they hired Don Nelson. However, when the team never seemed to get under Nelson, he was replaced in the middle of the season by a longtime assistant, Jeff Van Gundy. Under Van Gundy, the team finished the season winning 13 of the final 22 games to post a 47-35 record, second in the Atlantic Division. In the first round of the playoffs, they would sweep the fourth-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers in 3 straight games. The team that won the Atlantic, like we said, the Orlando Magic, 60-22, pretty impressive record. That's with Shaquille O'Neal missing the first 22 games of the season due to a thumb injury. Anthony Hardaway stepped up in his absence and was awarded the Player of the Month for November. And they had Dennis Scott take a place in league history by scoring 267 three-point field goals, a single-season record. Well, you'll find out shortly why we are looking at the Knicks and the Orlando Magic. The Bulls lineup. All right, so one area I think Golden State definitely beats the Bulls is the depth. Now, having said that, after looking at this roster, I am kind of second-guessing myself. The Bulls starting five: Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Luke Longley, Ron Harper, Michael Jordan. The bench: New Mexico State, Randy Brown. They had Jason Caffey, Jack Haley, Steve Kerr, not bad. Tony Kukoc, not bad. John Sally on the bench. And Bill Wennington. So I think in terms of benches, I think you got to give it to Golden State. Now, one of the more remarkable things we have to remember is this was the 1996 season. Way more physical, and look at the NBA All-Star rosters alone. Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, Detroit Pistons, Shaquille O'Neal playing for the Magic, Penny Hardaway with the Magic. You had Patrick Ewing in the Knicks, Alonzo Mourning with Miami, Glenn Rice over in Charlotte, Juwan Howard playing for the Bullets. Let's just go right into the first round of the playoffs. So the Chicago Bulls going in, winning. And man, Wikipedia has this changed all a record that stood for 20 years until Golden State finished 73-9. They were the first team ever to win 70 games in a season. They would go on and sweep the Miami Heat that we talked about earlier. That was under Pat Riley for the first time with Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway on the roster. They would sweep them. Second round, they would have to meet up with the Knicks, and they would beat them in 5 games. Could you imagine now? Could you imagine Steph Curry having to play a 7-game series, a best of 7-game series, going up against the New York Knicks, a team that had a man named Charles Oakley on the roster? Anthony Mason was on that team too. Even Patrick Ewing, could you imagine Steph Curry being guarded by John Starks, Charles Oakley, and Anthony Mason? He would be dead. He would absolutely be dead. Those guys would murder him on the court. We would watch a murder taking place. Like, I don't even want to watch the Chicago Bulls, the 96 Bulls take on the current Golden State Warriors. I want to watch the 96 New York Knicks play them. Far better game. Are the Golden State Warriors a better team? Way more talented and athletic than the New York Knicks of 1996? Absolutely. But who doesn't want to watch Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason, and John Starks going up against Draymond Green and Steph Curry? I'm all in for that, because I feel like it would be just assaults, and in our PC culture today, people would be losing their minds. Now, an interesting note about both the Chicago Bulls and the current Golden State Warriors. Now, coming into the 96 season, 69 wins was the all-time record held by the Los Angeles Lakers. Phil Jackson, of course, we know, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Now, he had an assistant, and I'm stumbling to find where his name is. I'll find it here in a second. That actually played for that Los Angeles Lakers team that won the 69 games. And then on the other end, Steve Kerr just so happened to play for the 96 Bulls, and now he's over there coaching, if you want to call it coaching, just having these guys, supervising these guys. Look what they did under Luke Walton when he coached at the beginning of the season. Just ridiculous. Even then, this Golden State team doesn't need a coach. This Bulls team would need a coach because you have guys like Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan on the team. People always sleep on just how great Dennis Rodman was. That guy was an animal. So what if he tried to marry himself at one point? One of the best players of all time. And a Hall of Famer. Dennis Rodman. I had a Dennis Rodman jersey when I was a kid, too, by the way. I once got thrown out of a basketball game at Boys and Girls Club, but that's another story for another time. So the Bulls would go on. They would win. They would beat the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-1, and then they would go on to play against the Seattle Sonics in the NBA Finals, winning that 4 games to 2, capping off one of the greatest seasons of all time. Up until this season, the greatest season of all time. I don't think you can compare the two teams I know it's only been 10 years apart, but the NBA, I think the Bulls doing 72 wins at that time was harder because of the fact that the NBA was so stacked with talent at the time, and it was far more physical of a league to play in, and they were able to stay healthy and endure over this long season to still win the 72 games, and then to go on and only lose 3 games. And I know it's a shorter NBA playoffs than it is now, but still, you only lose 3 games in the NBA playoffs, and when you're playing against the best teams. Oh, it's not even. I'm sorry. Actually, they didn't play. I completely goofed. They didn't play the Knicks in the conference finals. I skipped the whole round because they played the Orlando Magic in the conference finals. And apparently the Orlando Magic also skipped that round because they got swept 4-0. The closest game was Game 4, in which the score was 106-101. The Bulls handed it to them by at least 10 in every game. Oh, I'm sorry, Game 2 was 93-88. So 2 games were decided by 5 points. The other 2 games